Okay, welcome to Empress Living, the YouTube channel which seeks to restore the Black woman back to her glory days. Now, this channel is not just, well, it's to restore the brand of Black women, but it's also to assist in Black women living independently of living well, independently of whatever is going on within her environment, and always being prepared. Sisters, you might be aware that I have been making a video series which is called Surviving the Hunger Games. And a couple of months ago, I actually made a video. It was let's see, it was 4 months ago, and it actually had to do with a method which was used for water purification, just using the sun. And to my I've been watching and keeping a very close eye in terms of what is going on in Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. And I was really quite surprised that many persons were not employing this method. In the Hunger Games, knowledge is key. You either have knowledge or you can die. And one can die physically, metaphysically, psychologically, emotionally, but it is a dreadful death without knowledge within the Hunger Games. Because what happens within the Hunger Games, institutional racism is employed. If there is an absence of institutional racism, what often might happen, you might have organized rescue missions, or lack thereof, or willful willful neglect of situations to assist. So you're basically on your own for the most part in a Hunger Games situation, and I believe we are in the period of the Hunger Games, and therefore I have been getting really strong messages to make these videos. There was a reason why I made this video on water purification. I had a strong feeling this was needed to be shared, and I did so. If you have relatives in the U.S. Virgin Islands or in Puerto Rico, for example, there is no reason why persons should actually be dying from waterborne illness when they are in a sunny climate, because you can just share the knowledge by letting them know if they have a clear container to collect the water in. As long as the water sits out for 4 to 6 hours before before drinking it, it will actually kill most of the bacteria. And if you go on a video that I uploaded on June 4th, that method is actually called the soda smash method. It's known as solar water disinfection, and that is whereby you will leave water out for about 4 to 6 hours. If you have a lot of sun that day, 4 hours, partial sun or partly cloudy, 6 hours. And then, as long as you leave it out for that period of time and it's a clear bottle, the sun will kill 98% of the bacteria. Now, if you have relatives there and persons that might already be becoming ill, if there is any pain in their body, then that's a sign of some kind of sepsis, and then they will have to be treated at that point by going directly to the hospital very quickly and being treated with some form of antibiotics. Now, I got a strong message as well to share with you natural antibiotics. And this is why the Hunger Games series is so really important in making you prepared and to really lead that sovereign path into your really in really having autonomy and mastery over environment. That's the reason why I actually share that knowledge with you. I had a strong feeling that this was I needed to share with you in terms of making your own natural antibiotics. And 3 weeks ago, I I mentioned a recipe in that video whereby, and I have the recipe on the video uploaded on September 17th. So you would need the garlic, onions, turmeric powder, apple cider vinegar, cloves, fresh pepper, ginger, horseradish, and then you let it cure for a while. You let it be there for quite some time before you use it, and I would recommend 2 weeks. Now, if persons had this, and by the way, each home should have this. So don't wait until something happens. As mentioned within the Hunger Games, by that, by the time there's a hurricane, there's a flooding, a lot of times it's too late because then you cannot get the necessary materials that you might need. No, you can still purify your water, but in terms of being able to get food supply to make the antibiotics, it might be somewhat challenging. So please make sure that you always have this. Never run out of natural antibiotics. And then you should always have containers of water available in your home, whether or not you are in a hurricane zone. If you are living in a hurricane zone, it's even more imperative to always be prepared. And you don't have to buy distilled water or anything like that. You could purify the water using the Saudis method that I've mentioned, and then you store a couple of containers of that water. Always have water, extra water with you, at least water that will last for at least a week or two of supply. Now, a lot of these isolated villages, what you will see is that the outreach is not there. On the Rachel Maddows show, there was one video that she uploaded showing the streets are clear, but FEMA actually was not delivering any supplies in many of those small areas. They were not delivering any water. They were not delivering food stuff. They made it out to some of the small areas 3 times, but each time it was only to take paperwork, and it was to ask the locals at that point to fill out information. So if you're living in the tropics, I have no idea why one would not have the knowledge to of how to purify water. This is probably also happening in the U.S. Virgin Islands. We're not hearing that much about what is going on there. Although I do believe the U.S. Virgin Islands, it is likely, I don't think they are a part of the CARICOM community, but at least they have access to other English-speaking islands around them that are a part of that community. And so perhaps they are, to some extent, getting some assistance, but they're probably not faring much better than Puerto Rico. So please, I understand that those videos that I do make does not get a lot. The Surviving the Hunger Game videos, many people don't pay attention to those videos, but there's a reason why I am bringing the information when I'm bringing it. The next set of information I'm going to bring to you is air purification, how to remove asbestos and mold and many other contaminants naturally, and which plants to actually use. There's certain plants that you could buy, very, very little money, that you should always have because it will purify those types of contaminants. So I'm getting a strong message to bring forth that information to you. I don't know why. We'll probably find out why in a month or even 2 months, as in the case with the other Surviving the Hunger Game videos that I've made. But I am going to bring that to you. So I want you to watch this and tell me what you really think, right? So let's watch this here.
4th week now since Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico.
4 weeks.
We get dramatic footage of how bad conditions are. But now that it is more than 3 weeks out from when that storm hit, the fact that conditions are still so difficult is no longer just a manifestation of how big and powerful the storm was. It's how insufficient the response has been. We got a very acute, specific piece of news about the relief effort in Puerto Rico today, specifically about what are called disaster medical assistance teams, the DMATs, that are teams of doctors and nurses and paramedics who deploy during natural disasters. This is a great resource that the federal government has in terms of disaster response. Well, today we learned that the senior medical officer on one of the federal DMAT teams in Puerto Rico, a doctor who has been on humanitarian missions in 10 countries, a doctor who has done DMAT work in Haiti after the earthquake there, in Japan after Fukushima, she has just quit her disaster response team in Puerto Rico because she says what's happening in Puerto Rico is a response that's being run in a way she has never seen in her 20 years of federal disaster response experience. Today, that doctor sent us these images, which she says show a spa day that was organized by federal medical staff, Health and Human Services medical staff, a spa day they organized for themselves in the middle of the disaster. This doctor tells us that they used the triage tents that are supposed to be for medical care for Puerto Ricans, but instead they brought in local Puerto Rican residents to give the medical workers cut-rate manicures and pedicures, while these medical professionals were being paid for their work as part of the disaster relief. But instead they were getting spa treatments. The senior medical officer wrote to her reporting officers at the Department of Health and Human Services and told them, quote, "I find this gross misuse of taxpayer funds and abuse of our privileged positions personally abhorrent." She pointed to the, quote, "optics of NDMS medical personnel responsible for seeing injured and ill Puerto Ricans who have no homes, food, or supplies, instead having a spa day on taxpayer money." Then she said, quote, "I can no longer serve with honor on this team." And then she quit after more than 20 years of experience doing this work. And her objections were not just that this is the way the federal response is spending taxpayer money in Puerto Rico. This doctor told us that part of her objection was that these were sterile environments. They were supposed to be. This is places where patients are supposed to be being treated. But as you can see, the medical professionals there were wearing flip-flops instead of sterile scrubs and boots because they were drying their pedicures. We reached out to the Department of Health and Human Services about this today, and they told us, quote, "The National Disaster Medical System, NDMS, has been made aware of the situation that this doctor has raised. NDMS has initiated an internal inquiry regarding the matter and will take appropriate action as necessary." Last night, we reported on this maddening situation in which you have people starting to die, Americans starting to die in Puerto Rico because of treatable bacterial infections. Infections they are getting because they still, 3 weeks on, have no access to drinking water, and so they've now been drinking for weeks out of creeks and streams. People are starting to die from waterborne bacterial infections, treatable infections, while apparently, spa day, but also while the USNS Comfort hospital ship is docked in Puerto Rico. The Comfort has hundreds of beds. It has 800 highly trained medical personnel, has state-of-the-art hospital facilities. And as of Monday this week, the USNS Comfort was treating 7 patients. On Tuesday, it went up to 8. They have hundreds of beds, 800 medical staff. They were treating 8 people as of Tuesday, while people were dying of treatable bacterial infections at the hospitals on the island where the Comfort is docked. Bacterial infections that people shouldn't be getting in the first place. One of the things the Comfort can do is manufacture drinking water. But even people who get these infections should not be dying from them because they are treatable, if they can be treated. But Americans are dying while this floating miracle of a hospital ship is right there, docked in Puerto Rico. What good is a floating miracle of a ship if they're not getting anybody on board to treat them? What this is an organizational failure. This is not the storm was too big. This is not there's no resources. The resources are there. The trained staff are there. This is not a matter of trying to summon resources. This is just organizing it. This is leading the effort. This is just trying to connect what's available with what is needed. This storm is no longer killing Americans. The federal government's response to this storm is now killing Americans. And we've got a live report coming up. Stay with us.
Well, as mentioned in the Hunger Games, you either have the knowledge or you die. As you can see, dear sisters, before these things happen, one has to be prepared. Preparation is the key. Make sure you have ample food, water, you have the antibiotics. Review all of my surviving the Hunger Game videos that I will make, and